what if, and hear me out on this, what if the piece of road safety infrastructure that actually saves the most lives this year isn't a state-of-the-art speed camera?
Right.
What if it's not some massive multi-million-dollar concrete barrier or a sweeping new national law, but rather a lunchbox?
The lunchbox. I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive. We're so conditioned to believe that massive, deadly societal crises require equally massive top-down interventions. We look upward to authorities, expecting press conferences and complex policy rollouts.
Exactly, but then you step into the actual ground-level reality of how human beings behave, and that whole top-down expectation gets totally turned on its head.
Oh.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today is Friday, May 8, 2026, and we know you. You are the kind of listener who is insanely curious, someone who wants a clear, thorough understanding of how the world works without, drowning in a sea of information overload.
Right. And our mission today is to deliver exactly that. We're taking an exclusive, highly focused look at Chapter 8 of the book HarGhar Se EkSainik by Syed Abdul Hakim.
Chapter 8, right?
Just Chapter 8. We are zeroing in entirely on this single chapter because, well, while the rest of the broader discourse on road safety points out the tragic problems, like the infrastructure gaps, the pressures of modern commuting, this specific chapter isolates the core mechanical solution.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because the hook here is absolutely fascinating. The ultimate solution to road safety might have absolutely nothing to do with flashy government campaigns. It hinges on a quiet, kind of unglamorous decision made in your own hallway before you even pick up your car keys.
Yeah.
To start, let's look at the title of the book itself. What exactly does it mean?
So the literal translation of HarGhar Se EkSainik is one soldier from every home.
I have to push back on that right away.
Soldier?
I know it sounds intense.
It does.
Yeah.
I get the gravity of road safety, obviously, but calling someone driving a minivan to the grocery store a soldier feels quite cinematic. It sounds like we're asking everyday commuters to go to war. Isn't that word just a bit too grand or maybe too emotionally loaded for a daily commute? It is a strong word for sure, and your hesitation is completely fair. But what's fascinating here is how the author deliberately redefines the term to strip away all those cinematic Hollywood associations.
Okay.
This is not about a military soldier standing at a border with a weapon. It's about being a soldier of the road. When you look past the uniform, what are the underlying sociological values that a soldier actually represents?
Discipline.
Exactly. We are talking about discipline, consistency, hyper-awareness of one's surroundings, and most importantly, a willingness to endure personal discomfort to protect the people around them.
Ah, okay, so it's divorcing the concept from combat entirely and focusing purely on the mindset of civic service.
Precisely.
That actually reframes it nicely. It reminds me of the person in the neighborhood who diligently wakes up at 5 a.m. to shovel the communal sidewalk after a huge snowstorm.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
We might call them a local hero, but there are no explosions happening in the background. It's just an ordinary, repetitive, physically taxing act of service that, prevents an elderly neighbor from slipping and going to the hospital.
That is a perfect analogy because it highlights the mechanism of prevention.
Yeah.
The road doesn't require dramatic sacrifices. It requires mundane consistency.
Right.
The Sainik, in this context, is just the person who decides that the safety of the anonymous strangers they share the road with is actually worth the cost of their own minor inconveniences.
Like putting a phone in the trunk so you literally cannot reach for it.
Yes, or refusing to start the engine until every single passenger is buckled, or giving a pedestrian a wider berth than is legally required.
Yeah.
These are quiet, uncelebrated defenses of a community.
It's the total absence of fanfare that makes it a sustainable behavior. So the takeaway for you listening to this right now is that you do not need to sign a registry, join a formal program, or perform heroics to be a Sainik.
Not at all.
You simply have to decide that your daily choices carry the weight of real, undeniable responsibility to yourself and to the stranger driving next to you.
And that reframing is vital because service to the nation, or even just service to your community, doesn't only happen in designated spaces like a military base or a charity drive. It happens at a busy, poorly lit intersection at dusk. It happens the exact moment you choose patience over the impulse to run a yellow light.
But I want to inject some realism here, if that's okay.
Sure.
If being a road soldier is essentially just about ordinary, sensible acts of care, why is it so incredibly hard for people to do it consistently? We are clearly in a crisis. People are absolutely not doing this on a wide scale.
They aren't. And the chapter argues that a profound psychological shift is required to fix this, moving from compliance to character.
Okay, compliance to character.
This is really the crux of Chapter 8. The author introduces this brilliant behavioral concept called rented safety. To understand it, think about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation.
All right, external versus internal.
Exactly. If you only strap on your helmet, or if you only cap the brakes to slow your vehicle down because you happen to spot a traffic camera, you are simply renting your safety from the state's enforcement apparatus.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the psychology of rented safety maps perfectly onto so many other areas of life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's exactly like an office employee who only works hard when the manager is physically walking down the hallway.
Yes.
The employee's posture straightens up, the typing gets furiously fast, but the literal second the boss turns the corner, the posture collapses and they go back to scrolling the internet.
They were just renting their productivity.
Right. The productivity was entirely rented by the manager's presence. True character is doing the work, or in the context of the road, wearing the helmet, because it's a reflection of who you are, not who is watching you.
And the mechanism of rented safety is inherently flawed because, like any rental agreement, you return the item the moment the transaction is over.
Wow.
The moment the speed camera is in the rearview mirror, or the road opens into an unmonitored empty stretch at midnight, that rented behavior vanishes immediately. The helmet gets unstrapped, the speed creeps back up. The safe behavior belongs to the threat of a fine, not to the driver.
Which means the system requires a massive, impossible cognitive load. You're constantly scanning the horizon for police rather than scanning the horizon for hazards.
Exactly. You're playing a game of hide and seek instead of driving safely.
But how do we actually get people to transition from renting to owning? It's easy to say build character, but fines do work in the short term, right? Fear of a ticket definitely changes behavior.
Fines work conditionally, but love works universally. The shift from a lawbreaker to a lifesaver requires moving the motivation from external fear to an internal standard. The Sainik operates from a love of life and a profound sense of duty to their family.
That makes sense.
When you operate out of fear of a financial penalty, your compliance has a hard expiration date.
Because the helmet goes on not to save $50, but because riding unprotected would be a direct betrayal of the people waiting for you at the dinner table.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this identity shift alters the brain's default pathways. Safe behavior becomes an automatic reflex rather than a calculated decision. The person who has made this shift carries their standard inside themselves wherever they go.
It's the difference between doing something because you have to and doing something because it's who you are.
And once that internal shift happens,
Yeah.
you view risk entirely differently. You keep the phone away not because the law says it's illegal, but because you genuinely internalize that every single second of distraction is a massive unconsented risk forced upon someone else's family.
Okay, I follow the psychology there. Let's say you make this shift. You, the listener, decide today, I am going to own my safety. I am not renting it anymore.
A great decision.
It is. That is fantastic for you on an individual level. But I'm still struggling with the scale of the problem. A private psychological shift inside one person's head doesn't intuitively seem like enough to change the chaotic, dangerous reality of an entire city's roads. How does this actually scale?
That is the exact question Chapter 8 anticipates, and it's where the author introduces the strategy of concentric circles.
Concentric circles.
Yeah, the change does spread, but it doesn't utilize massive top-down broadcast methods. It spreads laterally, through proximity, visible social proof, and the accumulated friction of a consistent example over time.
So it's a grassroots mechanism starting literally at your own front door.
Exactly. The author details 4 distinct circles of cultural change, mapping out how behavioral contagion actually works. The first circle is the home, and the book uses a highly specific, very memorable anecdote to illustrate the mechanics of this first circle.
Oh, the Tiffin story.
Yes, the Tiffin story.
I found this to be the most compelling part of the chapter because it's so remarkably simple. So there's a wife who notices her husband consistently leaving his motorcycle helmet on the hook by the door every single morning. He rides to work completely unprotected.
Right.
But she doesn't nag him. She doesn't print out mortality statistics or give a lecture. One morning, she simply refuses to pack his lunch, his tiffin.
And when he inevitably asks her why his lunch isn't packed and ready to go, she delivers a single, unarguable boundary. She says, when the helmet goes on, the tiffin comes with it.
He laughs it off initially, assuming it's a joke. But she holds the line entirely. She doesn't waver.
Not at all.
By the very next morning, the helmet goes on his head. Within a week, the behavior is completely automatic. What she accomplished was attaching a consequence to his action, but crucially, it wasn't a punitive, state-mandated consequence like a fine.
Right, it was personal.
She basically communicated, I refuse to be a silent accomplice to your carelessness.
She introduced emotional and relational stakes into a previously mundane decision. That is the first circle turning. It's the spouse, the child, or the parent who bears witness to the daily departure sequence in the hallway. When an expectation is held firmly enough and for long enough by someone you deeply love, it transforms into a shared standard.
But a habit built in a hallway doesn't stay trapped in a hallway. Humans are incredibly observant, tribal creatures, which pushes us out into the second circle, right? The street, the apartment building, the immediate physical community.
Exactly. Behavior leaks into the public square. Let's look at the mechanics of social proof in, say, an apartment complex. If one family starts consistently wearing helmets for every single trip, no matter if they're just going around the block, the neighbors see it.
People notice.
They do. No official directive was issued by the homeowners association, but another family observes this consistency. It triggers a subtle psychological pressure, and they start doing it too. Then a third family adopts it.
I want to use an analogy here to explain why that pressure actually works. It's like walking into a room where everyone happens to be whispering.
Oh, that's good.
Even if there is no quiet please sign anywhere, and even if you don't know why they are whispering, your instinct is to instantly lower your voice.
You don't want either the loud one.
Exactly. The environment dictates the behavior. As this visual consistency spreads in a neighborhood, you suddenly become the odd one out if you aren't wearing a helmet.
The sociology of awkwardness is an incredibly powerful enforcement tool. Behavior shifts from something a few overly cautious people do to the baseline standard of how things are done here. The individual who deviates from the norm becomes the one who feels exposed and uncomfortable.
Which flows powerfully into the modern reality of the third circle. The workplace, our broader social networks, and critically, our digital spaces. I'm really curious how the Sainik mindset survives contact with the internet, where, outrage and recklessness are usually rewarded by algorithms.
This is where the cultural influence truly scales up. In the physical workplace, it's the colleague who, perhaps after witnessing a near miss on their commute, quietly proposes a team agreement. They might say, let's all commit to a strict no-phone driving rule during our morning commutes so we don't pressure each other to answer emails from the wheel.
Setting a standard without being preachy.
Exactly. But the digital space is where the disruption is most profound.
The book touches on this, and it feels so relevant right now. Our group chats and social feeds are filled with viral dashcam videos of reckless driving, high-speed weaving, aggressive road rage. And it's usually shared with fire emojis or treated as pure entertainment.
That's normalized.
But the third circle Sainik uses their digital footprint completely differently. Instead of amplifying the spectacle, they might post an honest, vulnerable note online about a mistake they made. They might write, hey, I glanced at a text today and almost hit a cyclist. It genuinely shook me up, and I'm putting my phone in the glove box from now on.
And this raises an important question. How do we, as a society, respond to the media diet we consume? When a dangerous driving video is shared in a WhatsApp group, the default human reaction is often laughter or, an endorsement of the driver's quote-unquote skill.
Right.
The person operating in the third circle acts as a circuit breaker. They drop a single grounding message into the chat. That could have been someone's last morning on Earth.
Just one message. It doesn't have to be a paragraph-long moralizing lecture. It's just a brief interjection that disrupts the echo chamber. It creates a tiny, highly awkward pause where the group's collective permission to treat danger as entertainment is genuinely questioned.
And questioned permission is the very first step toward revoked permission.
So what does this all mean?
That mechanism of revoking permission is what finally culminates in the fourth circle, the macro culture at large. This is the ultimate long-term goal envisioned in Chapter 8. A mature, functional road safety culture is one where unsafe behavior has finally become the marked, abnormal behavior.
Okay, I see. It means we have to systematically flip the script of societal pressure. Right now, in far too many places, the person who insists on buckling their seatbelt in the backseat of a taxi, or the driver who staunchly refuses to check their notifications at a long red light, they are treated as the weirdly cautious one.
They're seen as the buzzkill.
Exactly, the buzzkill. The fourth circle is achieved when the person without the helmet is the one who feels deeply exposed, awkward, and entirely out of place.
The cultural shift is complete when picking up a phone while driving at speed draws a sharper, more disappointed reaction from your own peers than any police officer's fine ever could.
Wow.
because the disappointment is coming from the people whose opinions actually matter to you.
I want to point this directly to you, the listener. We so often fall into the trap of thinking that cultural change is a massive, expensive media phenomenon, something that requires celebrity endorsements, catchy slogans, and millions of dollars in ad spend. But it's not. It is fundamentally a neighborhood phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Every single time you choose to wait patiently at a junction or put your phone in your bag before you shift into drive, you are silently broadcasting permission for others in your immediate circle to do exactly the same. You are turning the wheel of that culture.
And that brings us to the true underlying arithmetic of this chapter. It strips away all the vast institutional complexity of urban planning and legal frameworks, and it brings the crisis down to a simple, undeniable equation.
One life saved is one family kept whole.
And one family kept whole makes a neighborhood, and by extension a nation, in some small but completely irreducible way, stronger. The entire architecture of public safety starts from the inside out.
It is incredibly grounding to think about it that way. We don't have to wait around for the perfect road infrastructure to be built or for flawless law enforcement to be deployed everywhere to start moving the needle on saving lives. The power to initiate that change is literally sitting on the hook by your front door right now.
The author's underlying thesis is unforgiving, but it's necessary. The road does not know your intentions. It doesn't care if you are an incredibly experienced driver just making a quick 5-minute run to the corner store.
Right. Physics doesn't care.
The physics of the road only knows what happens in the next split second. And the family waiting for you back at the house only knows if you manage to walk back through that front door.
Which brings us right back to the hallway where we started today. We explored how the ultimate solution isn't some sweeping national policy, but a quiet, internal decision. So, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to really mull over before you take your next trip.
Think about the very next time you slide behind the wheel of your car or throw your leg over a bike.
Before the engine even turns over, before you merge into traffic, what is the one invisible habit you are silently endorsing to the passenger sitting next to you or to the neighbors who are watching you pull out of your driveway? Because if your neighborhood's larger road culture is simply a direct mirror of your own driveway, what exactly is it reflecting back at you?
Is it reflecting a safety that is merely rented for the journey? Or is it reflecting a character that you truly own?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Chapter 8. We hope this exploration gives you a completely new lens for your next commute. Stay curious, take ownership of your safety, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.